Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for joining today's webinar, What's New in Cognos 10.2.2. Today's webinar will talk about new features of the tool. On today's webinar, we have myself, Kristen Brown. I'm the Marketing Events Manager with Ironside, as well as Stephen Kratek, an account executive, and the presenter of our webinar, Wayne Estrada, who is a Senior Technical Instructor for Ironside. You can connect with Ironside and contribute to the conversation. We're on Twitter at Ironside Group. Wayne's email is also included. It's westrada@ironsidegroup.com. And for more information regarding today's presentation, you can email us at getinsights@ironsidegroup.com. We are going to filter all the questions, and we'll have a live Q&A at the end of the session and go from there. So I'm now going to pass it over to Stephen Kratek.
Thank you, Kristen. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephen Kratek, and I'm a member of the sales team here at Ironside. I'd like to talk to you briefly about who we are. Ironside's a premier IBM partner. We've built a firm with deep expertise that spans the entire information delivery lifecycle. We can help you with data and analytics strategy, data integration and governance. We've got a strong information management practice with expertise in big data and Hadoop, visualization and reporting. Of note in these areas, we are innovative solutions around mobile reporting and dashboarding. So if that's something of interest to you, please ask us about it. So financial performance, sales and operations planning, forecasting and modeling. We do advanced analytics, think predictive customer intelligence, segmentation, predictive modeling. We have a cloud and managed services division, so we can host and manage your business analytics platform. We're an industry leader in IBM Business Analytics training with about 98% positive feedback from our customers. We've got some of the best instructors in the country for Cognos BI, TM1, and SPSS on our team. One of them will be presenting today. We write and regularly enhance our curriculum, and we offer classes in both public and private on-site settings. And finally, we have a remote development services where we provide onshore business application development. And so in summary, we exist to make the world of business smarter, turning data into valuable insights, and help drive positive business outcomes. At this point, I'd like to turn it over. Oh, we got one more slide here. You'll see a few numbers about Ironside here. We founded in 1999. We're an original Cognos partner. 500 happy clients, more than 100 brilliant analytic minds in our organization. We think it's a great place to work. So again, now I'm going to turn it over to today's presenter, Senior Technical Instructor Wayne Estrada. Wayne?
Thank you, Stephen. Today we're going to talk about Cognos 10.2.2. And as always, since the Cognos 8.1 days, the product gets better and better and better. So what's the difference with the 10 environment and also the 10.2.2, which I'll just streamline and call it .2 from now on. In .2, we have a much more streamlined interface. For example, aggregation options in dynamic cubes, faster report creation, being able to reuse different objects and reports and be able to administer your system better. Integrations are greatly improved. We have external data, which we actually introduced in Cognos 8.4, but we have another external data capability we'll be talking about a little bit later on today. Of course, the heart of Cognos is the package, and we have some modeling enhancements as well. Probably well overdue. This is the one area that we haven't done a lot of enhancements with in the last 7 or 8 years, which is modeling. So we'll talk about that a little bit today. Some of the studio enhancements and cross-tool connections and beautification. Visualizations, which is one of our the major things that IBM has brought to the table with the analytics user interface, user experience rather, or AUX. You might want to write that down. That's the new buzzword that's out there right now. Making it much easier for people to consume data quickly, easily, efficiently, and effectively. Beautification, something called tab reports, being able to update the interface and smooth active reports. Now, some of you might have been in some of my online classes, or you've sat in my public classes. I am an instructor. I'm not a salesperson, and as I've told you in those classes, I get paid to tell the truth. And I will tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly about Cognos. Lots of great things would go going on here. As always, the product keeps improving, gets better and better and better. And I like to summarize the slide by saying that things are faster, fancier, and more functional. And that's just, the 3 F's about .2 that I see as we go forward. So let's take a look at some of the reporting updates. With visualizations, we have a lot more and different types of charts that are available for consumption. And these charts include things like these bubbles or tabs. They also include things like interactive charts, and we'll talk about visualizations a little bit later on. Another really great thing is called tabbed reports. And tab reports, like you'd have tabs in your browser, you can open up other tabs for different reports, and instead of going page down, you can go to tabs. We'll take a look at that a little bit later on. Active reports has been an extremely powerful and popular, that's the word I was looking for, thing that's been added to the Cognos arsenal, and we'll talk about Active Report Preview, which makes development reports better. And on Cognos Workspace, a much easier way to interact with your objects via master filters, a new external data option called My Data Sets, and also a much easier way to add templates to your reports rather than traditional way. So let's get started here. 10.2.2 modeling updates in Framework Manager. If you've been an FM person and done modeling, there can be certain business challenges hard to overcome. And sometimes the way that we have to do some of the joins can decrease in performance. So in Framework Manager, we have a bridge and summary query subjects capability, so that in Snowflake situations, you can consolidate into a query subject that acts as a virtual table a little bit more easily. Also being able to put joins on filters, or filters on joins rather, to increase performance rather than pulling the entire table out. Another thing that's really nice is parameter maps. A parameter map, if you take in the FM class, is a 2-column lookup table. And if you use parameter maps based on your imported data via the metadata wizard, it will automatically update your parameter maps, which is really, really nice feature for keeping things current and not having to go back and republish a package when there are new changes to the database. Another great enhancement, if you're not familiar with dynamic cubes, you really need to understand the benefits of dynamic cubes. For years, we've had traditional cubes like Transformer, and of course, industry leaders like Microsoft Analysis Services, MSAS, Hyperion, other excellent competitive products, actually. Cognos is database agnostic. We don't care. But the big thing about those products, including our own, is that they are file-based and they are limited in size. Our Cube Designer or Dynamic Cube allows you to have memory-resident cubes. And so performance is sterling. It's easy to add to that cube. And the big benefit of our enhancement in .2 is we can now use the modeling done in Framework Manager to build the cube. So to put this in layman's terms, instead of having one modeling environment for your traditional packages and one modeling environment for your dynamic cubes, we do one business model in the Framework Manager, and we can hijack or use that in dynamic cubes. Also, a big part of any kind of cube-based environment is aggregated values, and we have some improved aggregation handling options in Cube Designer. So all that means is faster development and faster results back to your end users. Now, some administrative updates. In the past, as many of you have taken my classes before, Cognos is 3 things. Number 1, it's a web-based application. Number 2, it's open data access. And number 3, it's self-service reporting. Now, this actually encompasses all 3 of those, because one of the things as a web-based application is we had a fairly static environment with Report Studio, Cognos Workspace Advanced, etc., about what icons could appear or not appear. And I get asked all the time, hey, Wayne, can we not show that icon on the screen? One of my favorite icons not to show is the visual aids icon. I call that the aids of Cognos, and then you can see my radar button here. But visual aids are essentially evil. We want to leave those options as much as possible, but now we have the option of turning that off, which is great. Now, the other great advantage of this is that you can customize and, dare I say, dumb down the interface to not confuse people with too many things to do. So you can simplify it. So in the past, we've had the 3 tiers. Report Studio, the largest tier, does everything. CWA, that middle tier, and then Query Studio, the lowest, least functional tier. So we can kind of either dumb down Report Studio or dumb down CWA to make it even more simple for end users to quickly and easily develop reports without confusing them. And then as they grow in their skill sets, we could add more of those capabilities. So that's a nice update to .2. So changing UI objects available, changing the default behaviors, adding accessibility. I mentioned visual aids, turning that off. And so it's just a better gateway to a more efficient self-service reporting. Remember 3 tenets of Cognos: web-based application, open data access, self-service reporting. This is helping that self-service reporting environment. So what you get, a modern intuitive analytics platform with IBM Cognos with powerful, agile back-end support that capitalizes on your resources, and the end result is to generate stunning, actionable insights. Now, I'd like to kind of go off on a tangent here and talk about this. I promise to tell you the truth about Cognos, the good, the bad, the ugly. Cognos has been kind of stuck in a kind of a 1990s look and feel, Microsoft look and feel. And what we're seeing now in .2 going forward is a much more pleasing palette to the end user. We can make reports look a lot glitzier, quite frankly. And in the age of Facebook and all these other apps on iPhones and Droids that people are used to, we can make our reports look much more consumable and attractive. If they're more consumable and attractive, they're going to be used more, and if they're going to be used more, they're going to provide more information faster. So that's one of the things that .2 brings to the table. So we'll talk a little bit about visualizations, but here's an example of one of those visualizations with interactive tabs up on the top. So moving on, visualization enhancements. We can make your data come alive now, where before it was a rather static world. It was a Polaroid snapshot of a chart, and it got thrown up on the screen, or as I like to say, inelegantly barfed up on the screen, and that's all you got. But with visualizations, we can have interaction that we would not normally have with a normal Cognos chart. So take this example here. We're looking at 5 different regions in the fabulous Great Outdoors company. We can then see our data differently by clicking on the different tabs. Now, part of this comes through something that we started to introduce in Cognos 10, and that is something called active reports. Now, if you're not familiar with active reports is what I like to call a push technology. So if you think about the web, whether you go to Google or eBay or your banking website, you're pulling down that data in real time, and you're looking at it, and it's not all that interactive. You're just pulling down something. Where ever since the advent of the smartphone and the BlackBerry, we now have push technology for mail. So what this is doing, instead of pushing a mail message to you, is that we can push out a chart like this to your iPad or to your iPhone or even to your PC that you can then click on these different elements and interact with it and not be connected to the network. And that's a whole other series of classes that we offer with our active reports. It is based on Report Studio, and it requires you to have a good familiarity with Report Studio. So getting back to visualizations, on the .2 visualization differences, we have more expanded properties. And those of you that have been in my class, I always say, Grasshopper, narrow focus, look in properties. Because the answer to everything you seek, Grasshopper, is probably in properties. Well, guess what? There are more properties now, which means you can manipulate things more. There are also optional categories we didn't have before, an easy way to convert from one visualization chart to another, and other new options. So there's an example of some of the properties and our conversion capability. Optional categories where before you had to drag and drop certain elements in, you can leave some of them as optional. And a lot more very sophisticated charts. That one circle there is called a chord chart. Doesn't look very understandable, but if you come to our visualizations class, you'll see how valuable this and a host of other charts are in presenting data to your end users. So we mentioned about visualization drop zones being optional. Here on the left is a series included. On the right, series left blank. So we don't have to fill out all the blanks now if we don't want to, and we can manipulate our charts any way we like to. So for conversions, you might start off with this area chart like this. You can right-click and say create a conversion, and then change it to another style. So in our visualizations class, which by the way is industry leading, we're the only vendor on the market, including IBM, that's offering this visualization. And this is a huge breakthrough, not just for IBM, but really for the AUX world of analytics user experience. Being able to present some very, very sophisticated data in a whole new way, a very much new millennial way. But getting back to our slide here, conversions made easy. So I mentioned about the chord chart showing the strength of relationships between connected categories. Just real briefly, if you've ever done any history studies of migration from Europe and especially the UK to America, you'll see that people from the northern part of England came mostly to New England, and people from the southern part of England came mostly to the Carolinas and Virginia. And if you look at the people in those different regions of England, look at the same people in Boston and let's say Carolina, they look a lot the same. It talks about those relationships migrating from one to the other. And that's what chord charts do. They show relationship from one side of the ocean to the other side of the ocean. Really, really sophisticated, high intensity chart type. We also have charts called tornado charts and other combination charts. There's actually about 3 dozen different new visualizations, and they all can be interactive with active reports. So leaving visualizations, let's talk about tab reports. I bet you're sick of these buttons, aren't you? So we have a report that has page after page after page. So we have a list report, a crosstab report, a chart, a map, another crosstab, etc. And we have to say page up and page down. Well, we've got a solution here. It's called tab reports. And here's how it works. Here's a list report with detailed regional revenue lists. And then there's another tab there that when we click on that tab, it can show that. Now, really what that is, if you're an author, is the list report is on page 1 and the chart is on page 2. But all we need to do in .2 is there is a new pull-down from the File pull-down menu. It says Report Properties. So we then go over Report Properties. We just say, I want to view the pages as tabs. And I can say no is the default. I can put them in the top left or I can put them in the bottom right. And that's all we have to do, just put them on separate pages. So you can just apply this to your existing multi-page reports and just zip and go. So again, enhancing that user interface, it's making it fancier and more functional and faster, the 3 F's we talked about earlier. Okay, moving on to another new topic, My Data Sets. In Cognos 8.4, we reintroduced the idea of having an external data file. Now, those of you that have been long-time Cognos people, you remember back in the old Cognos 7 days that we had hot files. Well, after our customers screamed at IBM for years and years when I was at IBM, we want hot files, we want hot files. Well, in Cognos 8.4, we got external data. And external data is a great thing. However, external data really is designed to be used by a single user from their C drive only. Now, yes, you can put it on a network drive and make it available, make the package available, but My Data Set solves a different problem. You can bring in a full data set as a complete functional package, explore and test it, maintain the data quality, and keep adding to it. The big difference between this is the data can be where you want it, whenever you want it. Now remember our 3 tenets of Cognos: web-based application, open data access, and self-service reporting. So we have the ability for users to upload their own custom data sets, and here's the difference. We take that data, we can start it in with an Excel, a comma-separated value file, or a text file, and we do a little bit of pseudo-modeling, put some properties on it, so which is a fact and which is a dimension, which is a attribute or a identifier. And Cognos will translate the file's context into data items, which you can then select or deselect based on what you want in that final package, which really is your data. You click Publish, and once you select what you want, you name the new package just like you have a new data source. So like external data, we're creating a package, but the package, as you can see, is, oh, look at that on the right side of the screen there, public folders, samples, models. That package is actually going into the Cognos environment, not necessarily your own personalized folders. Now, this is the real benefit of this. Admins are not going to not like this because the admin still retains full control of all the my data sets published in our package. And, kind of cool here, we can see the size of this so-called file and how big it is. So the administrator, if somebody puts something up there that is inappropriate or not corporate correct, remember that Cognos provides one version of the truth. That's one of the things that I always talk about in class, is that's the benefit of Cognos over lots of BI environments. A well-defined package will provide us with one version of the truth. The administrator can sanitize that data and verify it to make sure it's okay. So we have security, and we have performance, and we have accuracy. All right, so moving on to our next topic, templates and style references. One of our 3 F's was fancier. One of the things that plagued us from the Cognos 8.x days was, well, if you want a template on a report, you'd have to add it when you're creating the report. And with this, and also it was kind of a pain to create a template. You had to create the template first and save it as a template and then bring it in. Well, oftentimes, like this slide shows, we create a report with data containers. I get asked this all the time in class. Hey, Wayne, I've created a report with a couple of different charts and a list report on it, and I really want to use that as a template for something else, and I've added a header and a footer to it, and I'd like to do that on another report with different data, or even, here's the kicker, with a different package. And I would tell people the answer in that case was no. But now we have any format at any time. So once we create that report, we can then say, save it, and we can reopen it as a template. And lo and behold, you'll notice that we have all the same header footer information. We have all the same data containers. And for you technical people, it does bring it in as the same package, but you know what? You can click on that new package icon on the top left sidebar and change the package, and then just drag and drop what you need. So when you open a Save Report as a template, Cognos strips out all the information previously presented, and you can add any new data from that package or from another package. So again, it's a time multiplier to speed up the creation of the reports and have a consistent user interface. Great stuff. So again, another example here, bringing new ideas into established styles. We can just reuse things that we've created without having to reinvent the wheel. I've never been a big fan of layout component references for you report authors, where you can take a widget, put it into a master report, and they have to suck it over into another report. I could just take that report and just make it into a template and open the report that way. So that saves us more time. It's much less cumbersome than layout component references. All right, next topic, active reports. A little preview earlier about active reports. One of the things that Cognos was lacking that some of IBM's competitors had was the ability to do analysis remotely, and especially in a very iPad-centric world, to do that analysis on a remote device, whether it's connected to the network at one time or not. Active reports introduced in Cognos 10 gave us that ability to take a report developed in Report Studio, save it as a .mht file, and either email it or dynamically push it out to users with different devices. So even simple active reports have lots of moving parts. So we have the ability to add sliders, movements, number cutoffs, currency symbols, and we can interact with that report in a variety of different ways. Now, one of the downsides to active reports previously was we used Report Studio as the development platform, but when we wanted to actually see how it actually worked, we'd have to save it as a .mht file, download to our PC, and then run it. Now we have a button that allows us to click on it while we're in Report Studio and say, let's see how this thing runs, how it flies. So again, report development time is cut down. Our 3Fs, faster, fancier, functional, is providing a faster ability to create these types of reports for end users. And by the way, for any of you managers out there listening, active reports are becoming a much, much more important part of the business world. One of our customers is a large distributor down in Florida, and they have the need for managers that are in stores or in warehouses to be able to walk around with their iPad and interact and look at their inventory or look at their production facility to get a feel of statistically what's going on. Active Reports allows us to do that, and because of the needs of business today, things moving so fast, they're demanding more reports faster. So this one feature is giving authors the ability to crank out more of those reports faster to that end user community. So this is a great enhancement in the Active Report world. So Active Reports provide animations, and you can interact with reports in a variety of ways. One button Active Report animations helps that report author to create that report and the end users to consume it in a better way. Our next topic is something called master filters. Now, what should be on the slide is master filters on Cognos Workspace. Now, let me go off on the little sidebar here, and IBM, I promise to tell you guys the truth, the good, the bad, and the ugly. IBM has done a horrible job of naming their products. We have Report Studio, we have Query Studio, and then we have this thing called Cognos Workspace Advanced, and then we have this other object called Cognos Workspace. Well, Cognos Workspace Advanced and Cognos Workspace are not at all related. Report Studio and what I like to call it, CWA and Query Studio, are report creation tools. Cognos Workspace is a dashboard design tool. IBM says it's for managers to put together their own dashboards, but the reality is that the authors will probably create reports and put them on a dashboard. So for those of you not familiar with Cognos Workspace, let me give you a quick analogy about it. I'd like you to go back to second grade in your mind, and you're in art class. Everybody has their own easel with a giant piece of paper on it, and in the table next to your easel are a bunch of pictures cut out of magazines by your teacher, and there's some glue. And your assignment is, children, I want you to go and take any pictures you want and make a poster. That is exactly what Cognos Workspace is. In this analogy, that white piece of paper is the Cognos Workspace, and the pictures are reports that were created by report authors. You can take any report, any picture or report you want, and you can paste it and place it anywhere on the screen you want. So using that analogy, let's look at this screen. We've got a crosstab with the default measure return quantity, and we have a chart. So we have multiple reports on the same screen, and as the slide says here, if you've got multiple reports with data categories in common, you can dynamically shift focus on both of them simultaneously in the dashboard. And we do that with a brand new button that looks like this. And previously we had the equivalent of a value prompt that you could drag up onto the screen. I'm going to go back one slide there. We would drag that up above that crosstab at the top, and it would automatically say, oh, I see this product line in the crosstab and this product line in the chart, and I'm going to give you the option of creating a prompt for that. Well, this just allows us to do it that much faster. In fact, if you can see on my screen here, right here is where that icon is located, and that's a new icon that's in Cognos Workspace. All right, 3 things of Cognos: web-based application, open data access, and self-service reporting. This last slide here, Cube Designer, is a little bit of the open data access and self-service reporting. We can easily transfer your excellent framework manager models and use that as the basis for building dynamic cubes. So the deal is that in the past we had to have 2 different types of libraries. Let me give you a car analogy. Let's say you've got iTunes at home on a media PC, and you also want to have music loaded onto some sort of a SIM drive in your car. Well, I'd have to build my playlist on my home machine and then build my playlist on my little SIM drive. Well, with this example, we build our relationships in Framework Manager. We create one version of the truth, and that's the benefit, strength of Cognos. We can then leverage that into the Cube Designer interface. So actually before it was a little bit awkward doing the dynamic cube design, but now we just can hijack that Framework Manager package and bring it right into dynamic cubes. Huge time saver, also much more intuitive for people that are familiar with Framework Manager. We do offer a dynamic cubes class, and you'll learn about some of the other aspects of dynamic cubes. We don't have time to talk about that today, but it's something you need to seriously look at if you're looking for more higher performance reporting. So we would then bring in from our design there, bring it right into Framework Manager. From Framework Manager to Cube Designer, you pick the elements you want, and with just a right click, you can bring new structures to your cube model. So again, pulling into our faster and functional of our 3Fs, it is faster and more functional than the original Cube Designer element. Some other modeling updates. Dynamic cubes, because they are memory resident, we have to make sure that the machine they live on is going to be big enough to handle the cube that's being created. So there's a hardware sizing wizard now, where before we were kind of shooting in the blind. So this is making it much easier for development. And also aggregation options. Oftentimes what any kind of a dimensional package is doing aggregation. We can control our more performance with our aggregation now than we could before. So any kind of standard aggregations that you want, or customized aggregations, we can pre-aggregate them, put them into the dynamic cube, make it available for our end users. And also, we can optimize the cubes. We do the same thing in Transformer 2. There are things that we can do to speed up the cube response time. We can optimize our dynamic cubes to perform better with periodic automated aggregation and recalculations. And the best part, it's just real simple, very simple in interface. And come to our dynamic cubes class, and we'll talk about these kind of things. I mentioned at the very beginning Framework Manager, and this gets rather technical, so I'm going to give this at a very, very high level. Sometimes we have to jump through several hoops to make Framework Manager modeling do what we want to do. So we have a new facility that makes it a lot easier to create new query subjects with bridge query subjects. We have what are called snowflake configurations, where multiple tables all relate to one another, but it's kind of an awkward way of tying them all together. And a filter join optimization to cut down the amount of data that's coming back. So bottom line is it's going to increase efficiency of your Framework Manager packages that are published to Cognos, and hopefully get you better performance. On a side note, I want to note that if you're new to Cognos, Cognos 10 brought something significant to the table, and that's dynamic query mode. And in a nutshell, what that means for management is my reports are going to run faster. It optimizes the hardware better through different software utilization techniques. It's a 64-bit architecture. And this combined with the Framework Manager, combined with the dynamic cubes, means that we're able to run bigger reports faster than we have before. So Cognos is increasing its functionality in that regard as well. User interface profiles. We can empower users through designs. The admins can craft custom views that complement different users' needs and comfort levels. We talked about being able to modify the components and behaviors. So now we have a way of, rather than getting just a straight B-flat Cognos environment, we can customize Report Studio or CWA to look the way we want to look. And it's all really in your hands with just a click of the mouse. Administrator can do this on a user-by-user basis, set up for profiles. Okay, so that takes us to questions, and I'm going to go off of this for just a second. And whoops, bear with me here. I clicked on the wrong thing here, so let's go with this instead. And next thing is get my camera here, and I like to talk to people. So let me bring this over here. And sorry for that mistake there. Okay, so I am Wayne Estrada, and I'm glad to talk to you today. And so let's field your questions here. And you know what I need to do is get my questions window up here so I can see the questions and see if there are any questions.
Wayne, it's Kristen. So any questions that come through, there's a little question button that you'll see on your screen. So just type the questions in, and then I will read them. So Wayne, we had a couple questions that come through. I'll read them to you, okay?
Okay.
What is the difference between tab reports and creating tabs in Cognos Workspace? Is there a reason to use one over the other?
Yeah, you know, one of the axioms of programming is using the right tool for the job. And when you have Workspace, you can have different data containers from different packages. And whether you're using that new icon or dragging over like a value prompt filter on it, you can interact with both of them on the same screen, which is really, really nice. Now, in the Cognos Workspace, you can also create multiple tabs. The big benefit of Cognos Workspace is that each of the data containers can be coming from a completely different package, and that's really, really nice. And you can have multiple data containers on the same screen. On a tab report, each page or each tab is a different report, and I just found this out recently, but actually you can bring in those objects as well from different pages from a page reference, which is another enhancement in 10.1, so that in a Cognos report, a crosstab report could be coming from a cube. On the next tab, a list report can be coming from a relational. On the next tab, a chart could be coming from a DMR. But I can only have one of those on each page. So to synthesize that answer, if I want to have more than one data container on a tab and interact with it, Cognos Workspace. If I want to just show individual reports on separate pages, then a tab report might be the best way to go.
How real-time are active reports?
Well, active reports, they're generated at the time they're made, and then they're pushed out. So what we have is what was done at that particular time. So think of it like if you had, kind of going using an old analogy, if you had a VCR and somebody gave you a VCR tape and then you put it into a player, you might be watching a video of something that was shot an hour ago, but so it's not real time. It is a stored data that we're viewing. So the way this is used in the real world is that people often will get these particular pushed out active reports for the previous day or the previous week, and then they can go through that data and analyze it as they'd like to, consume it as they'd like to.
Can dynamic cubes be created in Framework Manager?
Dynamic cubes, the modeling can be done in Framework Manager, and that modeling can then be passed into the dynamic cube environment. One of the phrases I use in the modeling class is that the enterprise relationship modeling has to be done somewhere by somebody. We can either do it in the data warehouse or we can do it in Framework Manager. The best practice is to do it in the data warehouse. So, but regardless, either way, we get that model in Framework Manager, and then we can pass that over to the dynamic cube environment very easily. So development time and use of dynamic cubes is much better. Other questions?
So do they still need Cube Designer and Transformer?
You know, that's an interesting question. Cube Designer could be used independently if you want to continue using Cube Designer. That's okay, nothing wrong with that. Transformer, there's some debates. Technical people like to argue about these things. There's some debates whether Transformer is going to go away or not. I personally love Transformer. I think it's a great product. In fact, any kind of a cube, MSAS cube or Hyperion cube, whatever, cubes have their use, and they have their different uses for different things. Briefly, the benefit of a Transformer cube, and I'm speaking technical for you technical administrators, is you could put your cube on each individual report server and then just point to that data source as the C drive, and it'll always look on the drive of that server. So it's never going across the network, and you don't have multiple people hitting the same cube. So it's just going over the back plane bus, so much better performance. The downside to the dynamic cubes is when we build a dynamic cube, it goes to one machine. So everybody's going to hit that machine. So it always gets down to what's the right tool for the job. So sometimes it's a dynamic cube, sometimes it is transformer, sometimes it's going to be a relational database. It might even be a DMR, although DMRs are kind of falling out of favor with a lot of folks right now.
Is Query Studio better than Workspace Advanced?
No. Query Studio, here's how I would recommend those products being used. I like to think of it like an inverted triangle, okay? And I like to use a lot of cooking analogies. So here's a cooking analogy. Query Studio at the bottom of that triangle is like going to the deli. It's like going to Jimmy John's or Subway, and you say, I want that bread, that meat, that cheese, that mayo. You really haven't cooked anything. CWA, which is the middle of that triangle, is your home kitchen. You can make an apple pie, you can make a meatloaf, you can make a Thanksgiving turkey, but you can't make a Ruth Chris steak in a 1600-degree oven because you don't have that or the skill. Report Studio at the very top is a fully equipped cordon bleu chef's kitchen, and you are the cordon bleu chef. So it requires a lot more training. So putting this in perspective, Query Studio, I like to joke, is a one-day class, 3/4 of a day class packed into one day. CWA is a 2-day class. Report Studio is a 3-day fundamental, 2-day advanced, 2-day dynamic dimensional reporting like cubes and DMR. And we at Ironside are developing an expert advanced class that's going to be about 3 or 4 days long that's really rocket scientist stuff. So you could have up to 12 days of training just in Report Studio. One of the axioms I always use, and I'd like you to write this down if you're on the seminar today, and that is that the answer with IBM Cognos is almost always usually yes. The question is how. That happens through two things, Framework Manager and Report Studio. And if we have a full understanding of those two products, we can make the answer to be yes. There are very few things we can't do in this environment.
To bring a Framework Manager into dynamic query, does it have to be a DMR model or can it be traditional relational model?
We usually use a DMR model to do that, but we can just take a relational and make it into DMR relatively easy. You can make a relational to a DMR, and I'll just say, I'm just going to guess here, that if you had 5 dimensions and 2 facts, it might take you maybe 30 minutes to do that. So that's not really that big of a deal.
Can we use separate summary tables for dynamic cube for different time levels?
Different summary tables for different time levels. You know, I have to be honest with you, I don't know. I'd have to research that, and if Kristen, you could park that question and email it to me, I'll research it.
Will do. Will the new template options negate the need for layout component references completely?
It's one of those features that you can choose to use or not use. I don't like layout component references. I think they're rather awkward to create, use, and manage. But I've always been a big proponent of templates, and that's why I teach in classes is that people create a template for finance and executives and sales and marketing and manufacturing and just use that template. But it just depends on what you're most comfortable creating. You can use them or not use them. It really is up to you. Me personally, I'm speaking as a peer, not as a teacher here. I don't prefer to use layout component references, but the new template thing is pretty nice feature.
Can dynamic query mode be used for Framework Manager packages?
Yes, it can be. It's a little tricky right now because I've been in this business 35 years, and we went from the 8-bit world to the 16-bit world, the 16 to the 32, and now we're going from the 32 to the 64. And quite frankly, not everybody we're not fully in a full 64-bit environment. And to use a commercial example, we're talking now about 4K TV, and we're not really in a 4K world yet. We still have Comcast and Dish Network, and it's not entirely always 4K. We're not entirely all 64-bit. And from a management standpoint, I should say technical management standpoint, getting all the drivers on your database server and your Cognos servers and on your operating systems and rev levels is still a little bit dicey. But this is where Ironside can help you out. We've got some great consultants that know this stuff inside out and backwards. But that's the direction we're going into. So the original question was, can we use FM in a 64-bit DQM environment? Answer is absolutely yes, but your miles may vary on how smart you are to put those things together.
If you change the template, do downstream reports using it also get changed, like with the layout component references?
No, they don't. Use the template. Templates are a Polaroid snapshot of that environment. So that's one big advantage of the layout component references, is that we can tie them into another report, and if that does get changed, it changes it over there too. So it just depends on what what floats your boat, what you want to do. Again, my personal preference is not to use layout component references, but they do have their purposes, and some people really like them. So it's just a matter of what you like to use. I mean, some people like to use Python, some people like to use Perl, some people like to use PHP. It just depends on what floats your boat. So yes, you can do that if you want.
Can you combine the layout component references with the template to avoid that problem?
There's a little line in my brain of either yes or no, and that sounds like a yes answer. I'd have to sit down and play with that video and affirm with yes, but I believe that's true.
What are the benefits of using DQM for framework manager packages?
Speed. One of the things about Cognos is it's database agnostic. So when I'm talking to that database, I want to talk to it in the most efficient way I can, and DQM is going to bring that data back to me more efficiently. And that's really a function of maximizing the hardware on the database and maximizing the hardware on the Cognos server. So FM it's really immaterial. It's really, can Cognos talk to a faster machine? The answer is yes. DQM makes that possible.
Great. Wayne, there are no other questions that came through, but there is one more slide. If you could go to that last slide.
Sure.
And for anybody on the call, just a reminder that we will send out the copy of this deck and a replay of the webinar. We'll probably get it to you early next week. We'd like to clean up the recording and make any changes to the document if we need to. If you have any other questions before, you can email getinsights@ironsidegroup.com and we'll channel them to Wayne. But Stephen, if you want to take over this slide.
Yeah, this is Stephen again. So just in closing, if you're ready to implement 10.2.2 or find any other enhancements for your business analytics environment, of course, Ironside can help in a few different ways. We can, of course, help you with your upgrade. And another way we can help is through our information delivery strategy. This is a short-term engagement. It's been very well received by our customers, where we'll help you align your data and analytics architecture and strategy with your business environment and your business strategy. So we assess your data, identify gaps, identify quick wins, prioritize long and midterm projects for your organization. So if you're interested in learning more, we're going to be sending out an email and following up on this webinar, and we'll be including a link to our solution brief. So if you download that solution brief, take a look and reach out to us if you have interest in further discussions. Okay, everyone. Well, thanks for joining us. That's it for today's webinar. We look forward to hearing from you and to staying in touch. Have a great day.